Alright, as one can tell from the audio content already on this channel, and the state of my desk, I've got some hobbies. Obviously music, headphones, speakers, trying to make my own music. Let's see, how well does that show up? I've got a lot of shit, man. Or that might have been too early in this to say that. Whatever. Maybe I'll actually have to edit this one. Either way, I've got a lot of hobbies. One of which, recently, after a long time away, has been these guys. Balisong, butterfly knives, whatever you want to call them. I'm a grown-ass man, coming up on 30, and, you know, the last time I really cared a lot about these things was probably 10 years ago, maybe. You know, I was a young man getting into knives in general. Oops, Sebastian's coming. Say hi. You know, as young men do, probably a little before I should have. Was fascinated by everyday carry knives when I became old enough to buy them. And, you know, eventually you come across things like these. Now, I think for me, getting into balisongs, it's kind of a cultural thing as well. I am Filipino, half Filipino, but the Filipino part of me is basically all that gets embraced, because my dad's many things, and most of my friends are Filipino. My roommate, who is gone but lives in that room, is Filipino. His girlfriend's Filipino. Anyways, these are from the Philippines. And as a young man embracing my culture a little bit, and also just liking knives, I figured out what a butterfly knife was. A balisong. Balisong. But I got into them back in the day where this was the gold standard, and everything was a copy of this. The 42. This is a real 42 Springer. I barely ever touch it, and that's why I can't even fan it. They're pretty jank compared to today's standard fare. This one was purchased secondhand. Its tune is bad, because they always are. This one tap. I think I tuned the tap out. No tap, but the play is crazy. Anyways, my first balisong ever was basically a very terrible Chinese clone of these, which were kind of the only thing you could get back then. I have a trainer one in this closet somewhere, but I don't like to look at it because it doesn't even flip. It doesn't even... Anyways, don't buy Baron Sons anything. But in those days, over 10 years ago probably, your only options to get into knives in general like these were either buy Benchmade stuff for premium, or buy custom stuff for a crazy amount. Especially for a kid who doesn't have a full-time job and couldn't dream of owning expensive knives. Like this one's a little more expensive. This is a custom Jimpy Sentinel that I bought secondhand, which is like the kind of the modern day perfection of the 42 in my opinion. 440C steel, which people didn't like, and that's why he changed it on the Sentinel. But this kind of provided the experience that a modern person would want from one of these. And that's why I bought one when I got back into things a few months ago, in like a more of a real way, where I wanted to learn how to try and flip around a little bit. I didn't daily carry my first knife. Number one, I live where they're kind of illegal. And number two, I kind of got into more traditional Spyderco, cold steel, stuff like that. The everyday carry knives that a rational mind would carry around, especially when you can only afford a $50 knife at the time or whatever. Anyways, long period of time where I didn't really buy any of these, didn't care about flipping, and you know, if you're a young kid right now, think about your hobbies, because in 10 years you're probably going to come back to them. I, as a working man, started making a little more money than I was when I was 18, and that's how I ended up with all these dumbass anime figures. Anyways, when I wanted to get a cool knife to carry around again, oh hell, where is that thing? Let's find my Lucha. I wanted to get a balisong to carry every day because, here it is. I no longer cared about how illegal they are, and again, it was like a cultural thing for me. Carrying one of these around just makes me feel a little bit more connected to the stuff that came from the Philippines, you know? Obviously, these were popularized by, like, gangster movies, and they're outlawed where I live, I'm pretty sure, because gangsters would carry these around. Even though they're not really any more efficient or dangerous than a regular folding knife or a switchblade or whatever. But it's an easy thing to tack on to, say, you arrest a gang member for selling drugs on the street, and oh, you have one of these, we'll add another year to your sentence because these are illegal specifically. I think it's that kind of thing. Either way, I stopped really giving a shit about what was legal or not to carry, because I have some friends who have out the fronts and stuff like that, which I believe are also illegal. But I wanted a new everyday knife. Saw that the Lucha came out, and after being away from balisongs for a long time, came back in and things really changed, right? Like, let's grab the 42 again. When I got into these things, there was you weren't buying a knife without a latch. That's just not traditionally what would happen. People were taking them out already, I believe, but the latchless balisong was much less common. You wanted to flip, you just flipped with the latch. That's why these springers exist and were desirable, so you don't have the T-latch banging around and messing up your flow, maybe. I came in things still wanting a latch because I was going to carry this every day, stuff like that. The idea of flipping wasn't really on my mind, so a few years ago I bought one of these, Kershaw Lucha. I've beaten this one up ever since. Just recently kind of tuned it up again. It was horrendously falling apart, and eventually I took my latch off when I got into flipping as a very, very beginner, obviously, by the lack of flipping in this video. What was I saying? This was my reintroduction to the hobby. Hi, Sebastian. And I actually really like these. Flippers don't like them, but they'll all say, as an everyday carry knife, you can't really go wrong with something like a lucha. It's tough as fuck, all steel, and you take the latch off and flipping becomes a little bit more approachable if you really want to do that to yourself, but I'm not so naive as to think that I should really put any time into trying to flip this thing around. And eventually, I wanted to take flipping a little more seriously in the hobby and wanted to try this guy. The Flytanium lucha handles. This lucha blade is the cheaper one. I believe this guy is the 20 CV steel blade, so it's a little bit more premium of a steel. I don't actually know much about hardness or edge retention, so whatever. This was the more expensive lucha. It served me well for a long time, but I wanted to get another knife. So I got one of these, I don't know, maybe a month ago. Just to have a cool lucha in case I want to everyday carry this guy. But in between these two, I decided, well, maybe I'll give flipping a try. I've always been more interested in collecting. So if I wanted to flip, where would I get started, right? It used to be 10 years ago probably that you would buy a Benchmade 42 shitty clone, commonly referred to now as the cheap Chinese crap balisongs, and you would tape the blade up if you didn't want to buy a trainer, and you would just flip that around. And I did that for a while when I was 18, 19, something like that, but fell out of it. You know, I kept cutting myself, and eventually the appeal kind of left because I didn't have a job to afford the much nicer Benchmade stuff at the time, which probably was, I don't know, the 51 I think was not discontinued yet. The 62 was either just launching or was finally around. Either way, I come back to the hobby, latches are gone, flipping's much more prevalent and refined, and there's creators like Will Hirsch, Telestro, you know, Blade Bias now is obviously a big one. And it all seems a lot more fun than it was years ago. So I want to try and get into flipping. What do? I buy a Volp. I got this thing probably a year ago. I think I got it either a few months after the Lucha or 6 months after at the most. Either way, got this, and for a little while I was trying to do like very basic things, and kind of fell out of having the time to sit around and flip this thing. Also, my this is Sebastian. He's a good boy. I had another dog, William, who I love very much, and unfortunately passed away, but he would freak out every time I picked this thing up. So out of courtesy to him, I kind of fell out of caring about flipping for a while, although I still brought the Lucha around with me everywhere. But now, obviously things changed. Started picking this guy up again just to mess around with in my free time. Decided, you know, let's give the hobby another shot. That's when I got that other Lucha, and in the past few months is when I've really started to try and, you know, go on YouTube and learn actual tricks. Obviously, I've been trying to behind the 8 ball this whole time, which is very sloppy, but anyways, that's all recent developments because, yeah, I have the time again. I have the desire. Although I have other hobbies like audio stuff, which you can tell by my other videos and how I introed this. Yeah, the cultural pull of balisongs to me is a strong one, right? Like, I mean, a lot of the flippers on YouTube are, you know, not Filipino, or don't even really acknowledge that these things came from the Philippines initially. So I figured I would at least, address that. But it's not that big of a detail. It's just a personal pull to the hobby for me. Anyway, this is the most recent pickup. The LDY Orion version 1.5. That'd be a thumbnail. Some shit like that. Anyways, I think this for, I don't know, 70-80 bucks is the most obvious starting point for somebody coming into the hobby, whether they're brand new or like me, some old motherfucker who was into this shit 10 years ago and decided to come back and everything's different and streamlined, and you know, Squid Industries wasn't around back then. If you wanted a balisong, it was bench made. The Spyderco spider flies were still around, I think, and everything else was pretty much garbage unless you were paying over $1,000 for a custom. But obviously, the landscape has changed tremendously with this guy and all the other brands. Like, I mean, I don't endorse the clone thing, but that being said, I did technically start off by buying a cheap Chinese clone of a Benchmade 42. And if you need an entry point, those are also pretty cool. But this thing just feels great. And really solidified the trajectory of me getting really back into these things and obviously caring enough to make a video about it. Yeah. I think that kind of wraps up what I was going for, just kind of talking about how things have changed for balisongs, for me, and my relationship with them. And if you made it this far, I guess this is also a pretty heavy endorsement for the LDY Orion version 1.5. Especially since LDY has a website now, you don't have to like DM on Instagram to buy. Although I think you still can. Yeah, things have just come a long way, and it's cool to see and come back to find that something that you really loved when you were young has kind of flourished and advanced in terms of technical execution of tricks and creators, content creators and makers of knives. I mean, this stuff is so much more accessible now, and I enjoy it when I see people embrace cool shit from the Philippines, because I'm Filipino. So I find that fascinating. Jesus. Anyways, I don't know. I'm thinking about making more of these point of view style flipping videos like every other balisong YouTube person, just because they're fun and easy, and a nice little vent, I think. Been watching a lot of stuff lately. Ooh, that's why I'm not flipping a live blade. Anyways, I'll wrap things up here. Feel like I've droned on and on enough. Let's say bye to Sebastian. You like being in videos, buddy? It's your second one in like a week. If you care about audio shit, you can watch my previous video on my channel where I talk about my audio setup in my bedroom. But this guy's all over that video too. He follows me around everywhere. He's like my shadow. Alright, buddy. Let's say bye to the people, huh?